Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be taking a look at how we can take an already very powerful Amplitube 5 software and make it even more useful and powerful by figuring out how we can control it via MIDI. The ability to control Amplitube 5 via MIDI really gives us the ability to turn it into a very powerful guitar rig for live or studio work, really improving the workflow of it and allowing us to accomplish a lot more. So let's take a bit of a deep dive look into just how we can do everything we need to with Amplitube 5 via MIDI control. So here we are over in a standalone version of Amplitube 5, and I have one of the factory presets recalled here called Bad Rock. Now, before I get into what we can actually do with Amplitube 5 via MIDI, I should talk a little bit about what my setup is. Unfortunately, I don't own every MIDI controller out there, and every MIDI controller is going to be capable of different things and different configurations. So I'm not going to be able to talk about every possible MIDI controller out there, but I will tell you what I'm using today, and pretty much the same sort of setup is going to apply as far as the Amplitube 5 software goes, regardless of what MIDI controller you're using. So what I have is I have my Morningstar Engineering MC8 MIDI controller. I'm a huge fan of the folks over at Morningstar. They make, in my opinion, the finest MIDI controllers out there. Hugely programmable. You can get them to do just about anything you want, and they just keep adding great features to it every time they do a firmware update, which they just recently released one. I also have plugged into that MIDI controller a Mission Engineering expression pedal, which I'm going to show you how to set up with Amplitube 5 as well. So along those lines, here's what I in fact have set up, just so you didn't have to watch me do this. I've set up my Morningstar MIDI controller to do a number of things. I want to have it be able to recall my presets via program change messages. I want to show you how we can change the bypass state of a particular effect we may have in a preset. And I want to show you how we can also change parameters and also control wahs and volume pedals. So what I've done here, and I'm going to have to turn here to access the buttons, but what I'm showing you here is that I labeled this button Appetite, which is corresponding to one of the presets within Amplitube 5, and I set a program change message of 0. If I change to my next one, I called this one Bad Rock, which is going to be another Amplitube preset, and I've changed this to a PC number of 1. You'll see why I made these settings when we get back over to Amplitube. I've also set up another button I labeled Compressor, and I have this so that it is sending the proper messages to turn an effect on and off within Amplitube. I've also set up another button, which is going to be used to control tap tempo. I've also set up my expression pedal to send out on CC number 8. So let's go back now and take a look and see exactly what all of these things are doing and how we can assign them. So let's start off by saying I want to be able to switch between presets. If you noticed, I set up a switch that was called Appetite and one that was called Bad Rock to correspond with a couple of the presets. Now, if we go over to our settings menu here, you'll notice we have some pages across the top. One of them says Control, and that's going to be the page we're going to be setting up all our information to be able to control the different parameters we want. But before we do that, we have to be on this Audio MIDI page. I have my Morningstar MC8 controller plugged into the back of my IK Multimedia AXIO interface. So the AXIO is what's going to be used for MIDI, and we have to set our MIDI input so Amplitube 5 knows where it's supposed to be accepting these MIDI commands from. Now, if we come over to the control panel here, you'll notice we have a bunch of selections. We have program change. This is where we're going to be able to change between different presets. And we can notice here PC040. I can choose whatever preset I want. I could also come over here and change the preset that it's pre-selected for me. But for now, we'll just leave it on Appetite and Bad Rock. We can also go to Control Change and have global level and preset level. So things like preset next, preset previous, control of the wah or volume pedal, tap tempo. And I'm going to show you how to set some of these up in just a moment. We can also go on the preset level and add commands to control different parameters on just about anything we have in here. You can see we can put bypass state, comp level, and all the different controls we have here. Now the preset will be saved with the preset, will not be global. So if we change preset, all the changes we make in here will not carry over to the next preset. They will only be for the preset we set them for. Whereas the global settings will transfer from preset to preset because they're just that, they're global. So I hope that's clear. So coming back over to the program change, you'll notice that the PC number for this preset is 001. The PC number for the Badrock preset is 002. Now over here on my Morningstar MC8, you will notice I set this appetite preset. So when I press this button, it sends a program change message of 0. Now 0 here is going to correspond in Amplitube with the 001 message. It's the first message. In the Morningstar MC8, the first PC number is 0. A little bit confusing, and that's fine. We can deal with that. If I move to my next preset that's called Badrock, you'll notice I have that set to PC number 1. So coming back over now, if I X out of this, you will notice that if I press these two buttons, because I've assigned them to the proper program change, I can now access Badrock with the Badrock button that I've set up, and Appetite with the Appetite button that I've set up. So very easily able to switch between presets. So that was very simple. Now, what about within the preset itself? Let's say the next thing I wanted to do is, let's say, turn the compressor on and off. Well, we could come back over here to our control panel, control change preset, and I could add the ability here by hitting this and choosing compressor and bypass. Or I could also just come over to the pedal itself, hover over the parameter I want to control and right click, and you'll notice it says assign MIDI, bypass. Okay, now it gives me the option to learn bypass. So I've already set up on my MC8 a switch that I want to control this, and I've labeled it compressor. So if I hit learn bypass, now Amplitube 5 is going to wait for me to press that button so it knows which button to communicate with. Now that I've pressed it, continuous presses on that will turn the compressor on and off as such. Now, one important thing to mention here, with this, I had to set up two different messages within this button, and that's the beautiful part about the Morningstar MIDI controllers. So what I have is toggle mode on, position 1 for the first message, position 2 for the second message. So when I press into position 1, it sends a CC value of 0, which turns the effect on. When I press it again, it sends a CC value of 127, which turns the effect off. So as we can see, that works very, very nicely. And again, that's going to be very dependent on how your particular MIDI controller works in how you set this up. But the setup within Amplitube 5 is very simple. We can either right click and assign the MIDI right from our preset page, or we can come over here, and now if I go back to the control panel, control change on the preset level, you'll see now we have compressor bypass, CC number 4, and it's all set to go. Well, what about more global settings? Let's say that we have the expression pedal set up much like I do, and we want to control, let's say, this Morley wah pedal. Well, we come over to our control change, global, and you'll notice it says wah right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click that, I'm going to hit learn again, and now I'm going to move my expression pedal. And you'll see right away, it recognizes that I've set that up on control change number 8. I hit OK. Now when I move this, you will notice the Morley wah pedal in my preset moving exactly as I want it to. Something you'll notice is another feature that says curve. So on 5, that's more of a linear movement of the expression pedal. So if you'll notice, if I move this down to, let's say, 1 and hit OK, as I move my foot on the expression pedal, you'll see how it really jumps off the start now. If I come over again, get back into this and change that up to 10, let's say, you'll notice now it's slower moving off the top. So it really just changes the response of that expression pedal. But for the most part, we'd probably just want to leave that on 5 for a more linear movement. Now, what if I wanted to set up tap tempo? Well, I would do much the same thing. On my Morningstar MC8, I've set up a button called tap tempo. And I've told it, when I press this, I'm going to send control change message number 10. Another important point is that we have to have our pedal set to the same MIDI channel. So if you notice here, I'm sending these messages out on MIDI channel 1, and in Amplitube, you'll notice it's receiving on MIDI channel 1. If I have this receiving on channel 2 and my expression pedal is sending it on channel 1, that's not going to work. They're not going to be talking to one another. So now I might go down a tap tempo. I'm going to hit learn. I'm going to come over to my Morningstar MC8, and I'm going to hit the button that I set for tap tempo. And you'll notice right away it recognizes that it received the message on CC number 10. Now you'll notice if I come out of here and tap on that button, look down here where the tap tempo is. It is controlling it beautifully, exactly as I would expect. So really great stuff there. Very easy to set up. Now, what if we wanted to use this CC number 4 for a different purpose? Maybe we don't want to bypass the compressor with it. Maybe we want to control something on our amp. What I can do is I could always remove this, or I could also just set up another switch on my MC8. But instead of doing that, let's just remove this. And let's come back out and go to our amp. And let's say that I actually wanted to control the ability to move my gain up and down. Maybe I have a lead sound that I want where the gain is boosted. So what I could do is, again, right click on this, assign MIDI, say learn gain. I'm going to come over and I'm going to hit that same switch I was using for the compressor. Now, we say, well, how can we use this to control it? What happens if I now press this? You'll notice that the gain goes from 0 to 10. You might say, well, that doesn't do me much good. That's really not what I want. Well, what happens now that we've assigned that? We can come back to our control panel, and we can set a minimum and a maximum setting for this. Now, this is in percentage. So let's say that I want my minimum set to, 40% and my maximum set to 70%. Now that I've done that, I hit OK. Now you'll notice when I hit this button, we go from the 4 to the 7 setting. We could say that maybe that's not exactly what we want. We can bring this down to, say, 34%. And now you'll notice that when I tap that, it goes a little bit lower. We can also invert that so that if we wanted it the other way around, I could have this minimum setting set at 70 and the maximum set at 40. You'll notice I get the same settings. Now, you might find that more useful if I also assigned another parameter to the same switch, which is possible. And you'll notice I learned the MIDI there as well. So if I come back over to my control panel here, I could also say, well, when the minimum setting on the gain is at 70, I want the master to be at 50. But when the max setting of 40 is on the gain, I want 80 to be the max on my master volume. So now if we come back here and press that one button, you'll notice now that both my gain and my master volume move with each other. And I could do this for a number of functions. I can just keep adding here and say, let's do the same thing. Let's add control of the presence control on the same switch so that now if I come back to my control panel here, now we have the presence, and I'm just picking random numbers here just for demonstration purposes. But now you'll notice that we have 3 different parameters moving when I click that button. And I could do this over and over and over again if I just keep learning that same switch to add to whatever parameter I feel it necessary for my particular preset. And again, I could set these to whatever numbers I want. You'll now notice that all of these parameters are jumping around. I could also set that at the same time to still control turning my compressor on and off. And you'll notice while it's doing that, these parameters are all still jumping. So we can really set up a snapshot in time of whatever we wanted to add to it. I could also come in here and tell it to bypass the overdrive at the same time as all these parameters are switching. So extremely powerful stuff. So what I've already done then, I have the ability to select a particular preset. I have the ability to control parameters. I have the ability to control wahs, volume pedals with an expression pedal. I can put effects in and out of bypass states. along with controlling a lot of these at the same time. And we can really look here for a full list of things we can control. We have all our program change messages and our control change messages right here globally, right? These are all the listed ones that we can assign as easy as I did today. We can also add our own preset level functionality as far as MIDI control goes. And you'll see here, if we just go to each menu, it tells us all the things that we can control. Everything from the angle of the mic and the axis of the mic, whatever is in our effects loops, our amp parameters, and our stomp box bypass and parameters. Everything is controllable by MIDI. Anything that can be controlled by either a program change or a control change message is going to be able to be controlled via MIDI. And this turns Amplitube into a very powerful guitar rig. So I hope I covered everything there, and I hope I did it in a way that actually made sense and that you understood. So again, depending on what MIDI controller you have, the setup on the MIDI controller side of things may be different than what I was doing. I really love the Morningstar MC3, MC6, and MC8 MIDI controllers. They're massively programmable, and it's very easy to program them via the MIDI editor that the folks at Morningstar give us. Once we have something like that, it really takes the programming of a preset within Amplitube 5 and makes it very simple and very effortless once we know what it is we're trying to accomplish within our preset. But I think you could see by what I showed today that the sky is really the limit. We have immense control and power over our preset, and this really makes it very, very useful for a possible use in a live rig or in a studio situation where we need access to a whole bunch of different sounds very quickly. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, please like the video, share it with anybody who you think would get some use out of it and enjoyment out of watching it. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more Amplitube 5 content. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.